Hello everyone and welcome to this special PJTV interview. I'm your host, Stephen Kruiser. Today our guest is Dr. Shimi Kang. She is a Harvard-trained doctor, the medical director for child and youth mental health in Vancouver, and a clinical associate professor at the University of British Columbia. Dr. Kang is also the author of the #1 best-selling book, The Dolphin Way, A Parent's Guide to Raising Healthy, Happy, and Motivated Kids Without Turning into a Tiger. Dr. Kang joins us today to discuss her latest book, The Self-Motivated Kid. In this new book, The Self-Motivated Kid, Dr. Kang addresses why today's kids lack motivation and how to prevent future generations from falling victim to the same fate. Welcome, Dr. Kang. Thank you for joining us. It's an honor to have you here today.
Thank you for having me, Stephen.
Let's start at the beginning here. What inspired you to write this book?
It really was inspiration plus angst. There was a clash of three different worlds. One was my world as a professional, as a researcher, as a psychiatrist that had worked with thousands of kids and families over 12 years and knew what motivates the brain and what leads to optimal children and child development. The other world was me as a parent, especially as a new parent. And there was a clash because I wasn't doing what I knew scientifically. I was doing what everyone else was doing, which were these over-parenting behaviors, and all of that clashed with what I felt and knew in my heart as a child who lived with freedom but also responsibility growing up. The world has changed so much, and I felt like I really needed to do something about it given what I was seeing in my practice with rising rates of mental health issues, entitlement, stress, insomnia, all of the things we're seeing in young people today.
So in the book, you make a point that a combination of overparenting or helicopter parenting and a disconnection from community and a lack of free time are to blame for the lack of internal drive in today's kids. Talk to me more about the important role a child's community plays in their development.
Yes, we've heard the term, it takes a village to raise a child, and unfortunately not just the village is disintegrating, but also the family unit, the very cellular unit of the village. Families are being disconnected because children are so busy. The home has become a pit stop between activities. We often see family dinners occurring in the car, and kids and parents aren't sitting together. And ironically, the family dinner is one of the most robust findings in all of child development to lead to better health, happiness, success, academics, etc. So we know that this community is essential. I say kids these days are socializing, but they're not social bonding. Social bonding occurs when we're playing with our neighbors in our neighborhoods and building a community. That's where we develop our individual and also what we call our collective identity. Who we are, what do we mean in this greater picture of the world? So everything a child needs for individual success develops within this context of a strong social community. Humans are social beings.
So one section of the book discusses the different kinds and forms of play as well as their crucial roles in human development. Can you tell us more about these different types of play, how to incorporate them into these daily stressful lives?
So play is amazing. The science of play is absolutely fabulous. I referenced over 300 articles in The Self-Motivated Kid. And there's a reason why play is so pervasive in nature. So I always tell parents, look towards nature, and it's the best parenting tool. And dolphins, polar bears, all animals play every day because play develops the frontal part of our brain. It gives us the tools we need to deal with uncertainty, learn from trial and error, and adapt. And certain kinds of play does more than others. So there's object play, which is playing with your hands, and we know that actually, when we strategize with our hands, we develop the same parts of our brain for critical thinking and strategy. Imaginary play really activates those creative centers of our brain. And then rough and tumble play, which is like kids wrestling and jostling, has profound development of the social areas of our brain. If we think about it, kids who have to wrestle are really learning that very fine balance between pushing and pulling too much physically. It's an analogy for social interaction. So there's 7 different kinds of play. Children do it naturally. The main message here is for parents and educators not to stand in the way. Give kids free time. Shut off some of the technology, and they will gravitate towards play.
Is free play almost completely lost right now? Is that one of the problems?
It is actually, Stephen. You know, the United Nations says that play is a fundamental right of every child, and in the last decade, kids have lost at least 8 hours of free, unstructured play a week. And my estimates, it's more than that. That's a conservative number. And all kinds of things are to blame, but the biggest thing is what we call a hurried lifestyle. Kids who are overparented and overscheduled, they're the most at risk for losing free play. I say that leads to play deprivation, and we really shouldn't see it as any different than sleep deprivation. These are fundamental human activities. They lead to healthy kids, happy kids, highly motivated kids. You don't have to motivate a kid to play. We want to make sure that we create the right environment and not stand in the way of it.
So one of the sections that I found most interesting was where you discussed the idea that overparenting produces anxious, unhappy, and sometimes drug-addled adults. Explain how that happens, please.
Sure. So when we think of the overparenting behaviors, there's over-scheduling, over-instructing, and over-protecting. So over-protecting leads to what we call bubble-wrapped kids who we know are fragile, they lack resilience, they're anxious, they're perfectionistic, they have poor coping strategies. Sometimes we call them teacups, easily breakable. And the over-scheduled child is often exhausted, burnt out, sleep-deprived. We sometimes use the term crispies. They're burnt to a crisp. They're 19 years old. They've been working since they were 4. And then the over-instructed child has never been allowed to learn from trial and error. They lack the ability to adapt, to solve problems on their feet and around obstacles. So when you think of all of those things that overscheduling, over-instructing, and over-protecting do, it leads to a child that lacking the fundamental coping skills, the fundamental self-motivation, internal drive, adaptability. And when you don't have that, you become anxious, depression, life seems overwhelming, small things become huge things, and we turn to other unhealthy ways of coping.
I really wish this book had been around when my daughter was young. You're preaching to the choir here. I wish I could have had this and go, see, I'm not insane. But okay, the book concludes with a guide to prescriptions that help to motivate children. Do you believe in prescribing, enhancement medicine to children to help them succeed, or is this a case where it should only be prescribed when there's a medical condition?
Medication should absolutely only be prescribed by a trained professional when there's a legitimate, well-researched, well-documented medical condition. I have full faith in the human brain. I think it's an amazing thing. If we give it the right environment, we can solve so many of our problems. However, the brain is just like the body, and just like some kids need medications for diabetes or asthma, mental illness is real. It affects 1 in 4 children, and part of their treatment for the more severe cases may be medication at times, but we really want to treat that question with a lot of respect and a lot of thoughtfulness.
Before we conclude here, one more question about the medication. A lot of people love to just say kids are over-medicated these days. It's just everybody tosses that out, whether they read anything about it or not. Do you think kids actually are over-medicated right now, or were they just underdiagnosed for so long, or was it a little bit of both?
I really do think it's a bit of a both. I am a psychiatrist. I've worked with kids for over 12 years. I prescribe medication every day. I do spend a lot of time taking kids off medications I don't think they need. I think a lot of kids can come off meds if they get more sleep and they get more play and more connection, particularly with their families. Unfortunately, I have parents wanting me to put their kids on meds instead of making some of those hard lifestyle choices. That's why I made prescriptions in the book. But there is still an underdiagnosis of the more serious conditions, the bipolar disorder, the depression. So we need to remove the stigma from serious mental illness, but also work harder to get a healthier lifestyle.
Okay, lastly, what do you most hope readers will take away from this book?
I think parenting I have 3 children of my own, and I say it's simple but not easy. All of the tools and prescriptions, when you read each one, I talk about sleep, I talk about collaboration, I talk about standing shoulder to shoulder with your child, making sure they have enough water, because 80% of kids are dehydrated, and then we wonder why they're cranky. All of these things are simple, but when we put them all together, it's not easy. It's not easy to live a balanced lifestyle, especially in this this imbalanced world. But my message is we have to make these changes in our lifestyle because our kids, we've never had such a generation of stressed, anxious, depressed, addicted children, obese, as we have now. And that's despite never having parents so involved in their children's lives. So it really is a paradox, and we really have to look at the bigger societal and personal factors and make those changes.
It's fantastic and very helpful stuff. Thank you very much for joining us today, Dr. Kang.
Thank you.
You can find Dr. Shimi Kang's insightful book, The Self-Motivated Kid, on Amazon.com and in your local bookstore. I'm Stephen Kruiser, and for everyone here at PJTV, thank you very much for watching.